Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to be here today. I have been in cyber since 2008, and I am absolutely passionate about this topic. And I'm really excited to be able to give you some valuable information, and I promise that you'll have some key good takeaways to be able to utilize after this session, and also just possibly bring in other teammates, because cybersecurity is not a one-person job, it's a team effort. So today's session, some of it may be overwhelming, but before I begin, I want you to know about that. Like, you don't have to be an expert in cybersecurity. Today's session will be about giving you knowledge and equipping you with kind of an awareness of knowing kind of where and what to do and maybe what to tackle first. You know, you can always bring in support to help you. You can even bring in team members to help you. There's tons of free resources out there that can even help you when you need something, like whether it's government, whether it's, because again, the government has issued lots of support out there to help small businesses like yourself, because they understand it's daunting and it's expensive and it's resource heavy. So the thing is that it's critical to your business success to be able to implement some of the best security practices that the government and security professionals like myself recommend. So we'll start with talking about why cybersecurity matters. We're going to talk about the landscape over this last year, the cybersecurity threat landscape. We'll talk about privacy matters, why it actually matters. We'll talk about some strategic risk management, right? Some best practices that you can utilize leaving here, and then cover some Q&As in order to help you tackle some of your business concerns. And I'm happy to be able to just directly ask those questions, even concerns like you need to understand there's no wrong question and no silly question, because with the changing landscape that we're really facing right now, it's like a new frontier, and some of it's so confusing because you don't know what you should prioritize because of all of the demands that are coming on you. Now the thing is what we're looking at now is, if we were to face it for what it is, our business unit, whatever unit you're in, whatever you manage, doesn't matter what the size of your business is. It doesn't matter what the size of your team is. What you should probably start looking at it is you're a technology company that hires staff to assist your clients in X service or X product. If you could have that mindset, you may be able to navigate the things that I'm about to cover today, because we can't look at what was done yesterday and think it's going to be effective today. And we can't look at what was done yesterday and think it's going to work today. We just can't. You can see, as I work with like Microsoft Office all of the time, they are pushing out changes in their software on a regular that we can't even as professionals keep up with on the admin side, like the back end, as we push it out to the end users like your staff. So we are trying to keep up with the technology software that they're pushing out to us and somewhat demanding us to utilize the services in that software the way they want us to use it. So we're being pushed to advance our technology, whether we're ready for it or not. But what that means is that there's also the risk in our business that we're not aware of because our technology is moving, but we're not. So let's talk about, first of all, you telling me, what are your top cybersecurity concerns right now? What brought you here today that made you take time out of your busy schedule for the hour to be able to understand, learn more about in cybersecurity? Please put it in there. Again, I want to be able to address your concerns, and knowing what your concerns are can help me target them, maybe deep dive into a couple of the topics a bit more based on what you're going to actually answer. So feel free to answer the poll that Matt has put out right now. And I could gather there's a lot of top like cybersecurity concerns that you may be facing. Not sure where to start. However, something brought you here today, and I'd really like to know what. even if it's curiosity, still want to know. Because every one of your business units are different, and every one of your business units have different challenges. And none of them are necessarily unique per se. You probably are more aligned together in this group than you realize. So that's why I think this would be great for us to collectively put our responses together, because I find that cybersecurity is somewhat siloed. If you don't know what your industry is doing, you don't know what your industry is facing, you don't know what challenges they're under. And I think us being in this session together might kind of lighten the load, and you might realize what I'm covering today is what the industry is facing as challenges in general. But then you can also see amongst your colleagues here, the other individuals in the different organizations, maybe they're experiencing the same concerns you are. So, at the end of the day, this is definitely not a solo issue. This is definitely a collective issue across small businesses, medium businesses, and large enterprises. So I need you to know it isn't separated anymore. I wish it were. We could say, oh, IBM has that problem, but this small healthcare clinic doesn't. It's unfortunately all pretty much combined under the same umbrella. The risks that happen to IBM or a TD Bank are going to happen to you as a small organization. So this means that you're not alone in this, and how we tackle this is about resources as well. And I know that resources are an issue. Really, I do. So that's why I want to be able to address today's session with knowing I'll give you both sides of the coin. Some where you can get some free resources, what you can do quickly and effectively, and then some where you would have to go, okay, I can't do this alone. I'm needed to outsource this resource because this is a critical service we need to offer, and we can't do it on our own because we don't have the expertise in-house. Okay, Matt, if you want to close the poll and we can review the answers.
Right. So yeah, I got 14 responses. The first is insurance claims, frontline emails, and filtering from clients and vendors, privacy, phishing attempts, access to PII information through emails, increased cybersecurity knowledge and annual training requirement, how to avoid shutdown due to cyber hacking. Data breach, phishing emails, threads, vulnerabilities. Sorry. What are the key essentials all leaders and board members need to know about cybersecurity, the landscape, and actions in the event of a breach? Also, are there any tutorials for boards? I'm assuming they mean board members. Phishing attacks on staff, client personal data breach, and then the last one is cybersecurity and AI tools, the risk of data sharing with AI tools, and the scope.
Okay, I like that one too. I won't be diving too much in AI, but I will cover it because it's a very good question, because that all lies in some of the questions you have are going to be leadership decisions, then dictating downwards to create policies and processes for your team members. So I believe your team members are willing to change and are going to act swiftly if you direct them. So let's keep that in mind when we're talking about what we're going to cover today. But I also need you to know that it is going to be a collective effort. It has to be a collective effort for you to make the change in your organization, and change is inevitable. So why does cybersecurity matter to your business? It matters more than ever, okay? Because what's happening is you're handling an incredible amount of valuable data. So data is the valuable commodity now. It just is. We call it the crown jewels because it is. So there's a few things that we have to face, and that is we have valuable data that we touch every single day, every single one of our staff. We probably mishandle data, and hackers want our data. So I can tell you all about the type of hackers out there, how elaborate their schemes are, what they're doing, how they're set up, but that's not what this session's about. I'm not going to tell you about the expertise and the magnitude of their enterprise, but let's just be aware that they have an enterprise that we can barely compete with, okay? So we know we have that threat landscape. It is not going away. So we have to face it for what it is. And we have to understand that we have to start kind of putting up Fort Knox around our business units, whatever size of an organization we have, immediately to be able to protect ourselves from these threat actors. So right now we're handling data, and data falls under the categories of everything you touch from personal information. So PII, as someone had mentioned, PII is personally identifiable information. So you may not realize how much your staff are handling it, but anything that identifies an individual. So your customers or your clients that you're getting data from, even your staff, that is all PII. SIN numbers, email addresses, work email addresses, home addresses, IP addresses, you name it. Like, it's a very daunting list of what is qualified under PII. And again, you can just look up what is PII and you can find the whole list there. And then you start looking at, well, what do we handle as PII? You can see the checklist and you can realize, oh, we handle a large amount of that. Now that is the data that's valuable. And the reason it's valuable is because hackers know if they get a hold of that, that compromises you as an organization, and it compromises you in many different ways. So we'll go through that in a bit. But what we have here is we have an identity crisis because of AI and because of your staff working in a technology environment. Your people are the access point to your organization. So they are the ones that get into your systems because they're the ones that are helping your clients, offering the services, helping with the services, and helping with the products. Whatever they are, doesn't matter what their role is, they are accessing a system. So think about all the systems your staff access. You could be using single sign-on, but you're still signing on to a bunch of cloud software, more than likely. And those access points are used by your staff. Now, what your staff are not aware of is that they're the target every day. So if your staff don't know that they're the target every day and they don't know why they're targeted every day, then they don't know that their identity is at risk. And then they won't know what to protect because they're not realizing they're being targeted from a hacker every single day. Now, the thing is I need to emphasize every single day. They're going to log off at 5 p.m. at the end of the day, come back to work the next day at 8, let's say, and their day is going to consist of that every day. The hackers are not, their day doesn't end at 5. They don't need a special certification to be able to do their job. They have expertise that we can barely understand. So we have to understand your staff are going to be targeted in a way that they have to be diligent about being aware of what they're up against. And again, we don't have to have them be expertise in cybersecurity. They don't have to know what a hacker does, how they do it, but they have to understand that we're now experiencing social engineering, like conning, like, someone being conned in this AI world in a new way. And to say it's an AI arms race is an understatement now, right? The magnitude of this industry is evolving, and we have to evolve quickly as well, because we have to manage our costs to effectively navigate. Our software is evolving. Everything we touch in our software has an AI capability now, whether we want it or not. Do our staff know how to navigate that AI component inside of that software, whether it's HR, whether it's accounting, whether it's just using the Word document? You're being pushed to use it, and then you can be inputting data there that's confidential to your company, confidential to your products, your services, your clients, your staff, because of this software that is being accessible to you with ease, right? So we call it identity access management. That means who's accessing what in your system and who's given permission to access that software. You may not think twice about that because you have it set up where it's systematic and it's like you get started, this is what you access. If you're an HR manager or if you're running this project, you access this. But what I'm saying here is that we have to make sure that we also give privileged access management so that we make sure only the right people are accessing this software and the information in that software based on the role that they're doing. Now, what's happening on the other end is that, if I'm accessing a software because I'm an HR manager, the thing is that I have a username and I have a password and I have that identity that's affiliated with that access. That's where the hackers are coming in and compromising that access. And that's what I mean by the identity crisis, because they can come in and with enough due diligence, they can figure out how to compromise my credentials and then steal them. And so that's where your staff are not aware of how easy their credentials are stolen. And that happens through simple ways, but business email compromise is the most vulnerable. Even with the technology that we have, all the filtering we have out there, you could be using Smart Dolphin and they're doing amazing work to be able to filter your email, but attackers are able to even circumvent that with AI technology. So they can even just do simple things with our AI technology by impersonating executives or vendors to request fund transfers or sensitive information through simple things in email. And we call this phishing, but it's just a different elevated version of phishing, because these campaigns can come in, whether it's spear phishing targeting an executive, or if it's just a big phishing campaign targeting all end users in, healthcare or in banking, doesn't matter what industry. These phishing campaigns are coming fast and furious, but what they're doing is they're really, really taking everything that we know to be safe, whether it be the brands of Microsoft, the brands of a bank, or the brand of your leader, your name, your position. They'll take that and they don't have to do much diligence to be able to find how you correspond, what your position is, what access you have in terms of the company if they know you're a VP. And all they have to do is just continually send out emails acting like you, and one of your staff, just takes one staff to go, oh, I have to respond to that, and that's my boss, so I have to do what my boss wants me to do. Again, you are the leader. You may know this, but what I am asking you to consider today is you probably have to be aware that maybe most of your staff don't know, right? That they're going to be bombarded with emails that will be coming from you to them and them thinking it is you and it's not, or a phone call, right? And so 75% of the targeted attacks, they begin with these sophisticated phishing campaigns. And 1 in 6 breaches involve AI-driven attacks. And they are really able to scale phishing and social engineering campaigns more than we've ever seen, because they can avoid the errors that we used to think were the dead giveaways, right? The misspelling, the bad logos, the errors that one would see in an email, those are gone. So one can't determine how to say what is real and what is not. And that is the common sentiment, what is real and what is not, because of AI capabilities. So we have to help our staff be able to determine what do they do to be able to navigate? How do they notice that? What will they look for? How can they be on guard? And that you as a leader have to provide them the training. There's no other way around it. So you have to allow them the opportunity to take that training so they can understand, what does that look like? How would they be on guard? The other thing is our mobile devices are now the target. And again, I get it all the time. I'm sure you get it all the time. But these are phishing schemes that target various means of your employees through this. And you can have a mobile device management plan, but they don't also understand is that it's now targeting them on that personal front, because they're bringing that device home, even though it's a work device. And the same thing happens if it's on their work device, if it's a bring your own device plan as well. So I don't even think there's a difference between your personal and your professional world when it comes to the communication, the incoming communication. So I received this text personally, and I didn't know what this was at all, but they had decided that this was one way to target me. And so the thing is that you can see on here what's very interesting is, if you did not receive this code, call us. So they're trying to get you in more ways than one, so they can at least go, okay, we've got to hook them somehow. Now, this might not mean anything to anybody. So it didn't mean anything to me. Obviously, I could tell it was a scam. But the thing is the impersonation, the spoofing text, the spoofing phone calls that are pretending that they're TD Bank, their insurance company, they're your telecommunication company. That is becoming so common, one doesn't even know when they should answer the phone call because they can't tell the difference. But this is happening over and over. So this is one of the top risks for your business. So how are you navigating that with your staff so that they can be aware of that, knowing they're a target through their phone if they have a bring your own device plan or a mobile company issued device. So it's a top risk for you. The other threat issues that are happening over the last year is this cloud misconfiguration. There's mismanaged permissions. And what I was talking about for the identity management piece, the privilege access management, is that some permissions are being granted across the board and they're being incorrectly given. So that is something you could reevaluate to review to make sure, that the VP has permission to the right accounts and your new staff who's just covering maybe a temp role doesn't have access to all of the software and all of the files. So those are top risks right now. Because we live in a cloud environment, we can mismanage that innocently, but also because we're in a hurry, we could just not double check certain aspects of our work. And so this is where we have to be diligent to double check our permissions in our cloud configuration. We also have to be very aware of how we're sharing our files. Again, a cloud environment makes it really easy to move from one software application to another. But how are we doing that? What's your policy around that within your company? That is where a huge risk is in your organization, because if you're having a file that has all of your clients' information in one, let's say Excel spreadsheet or SharePoint, you export that file that has client name, client last name, client address, client, you name it, banking, or at any other PII data points inside of that Excel spreadsheet or that SharePoint that's exported out, and you're transferring that and sending it in an insecure manner, and then it's being received not encrypted and then landing in someone's inbox insecurely as well. That is a high risk to your organization because that can be intercepted by hackers. Because again, like we just said, business email compromise is the highest risk for you. That means if their email is compromised, that means anything that they receive in their email is compromised. That means their credentials are compromised, right? And then the encryption is an issue. And that's something where you need a managed service provider to help you to ensure that there's encryption on the back end of so that you can be protecting the data that you use, because you can't necessarily just save everything on a desktop or in a OneDrive without securing it. That is where the risk is. See, we have software that we have access to, but we don't put security first with any of this software. And no software company is considering that their first mandate either. They're doing that as oh, shoots, we should add that. Oh, shoots, we should add that security measure. So they're pushing it, but you can see how far behind they are. And that is what's daunting, is that means that the onus is on us as business owners and business leaders. Whether you want it or not, you have to take that leadership role to own that accountability on securing your company and all of the assets it uses, software included. Now, right now, the cost of breaches in this last year, it's at 4.4 million. It went down a little bit. It used to be in 2024, it used to be 4.8. And one of the reasons of that is that less companies are paying the ransom when they get a ransomware attack from a ransomware gang, because the government, federal authorities are emphasizing, please do not pay these criminals. Please do not, no matter what. Now, the flip side is, yes, there's reputational harm, there's loss of business, there's business downtime, but the greater cost is these criminals keep coming because they know how to effectively take you down, you're out of business for a certain amount of time, and you're at kind of their mercy. And so they're playing the cards the way that they have been effective over the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. Really, it's escalated. And so we have to be able to take measures into our own hands to say, how can we prevent that? And for small businesses, what they're basing it on, for example, is they're calling it a cost per record. So a record would be a client name, client confidential information on a client record, for example. That compromised record, it can cost $128 to $234 per compromised record. So then that adds up to, for a small business, $120,000 to $1.24 million in range of cost. So it's high. Because what's happening is these ransomware gangs know they can sell these records for a large amount of money, and a bidder will take that data set and they will use it. They will buy it in the dark web and reuse it. So there is assets here based on dollar amounts per data set. So this is how they've broken it down, and they manage this quarterly. They determine all of these types of threats and compromises and breaches, and they review them quarterly because that's how common it is. Now, these breaches are happening all over Canada, right? First Nations Health Authority happened, Toronto Public Library happened, the government of BC, Transnorth happened. London Drugs was a really obvious one too, because that impacted a lot of people. And I mean, for London Drugs, their business disruption, they closed their stores for 10 days. The average business disruption is 3 weeks downtime. So I have to ask you, could you afford to be offline for 3 weeks? Because that's the immediate business consequence of a breach or a cyber incident occurring in your business. Immediately, you will be down for a matter of a minimum of 10 days. Now, when we look at some of these breaches, there was larger records compromised. Some had more, some had less. Some had a bigger impact on their community, some had less. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if you were to look at, let's say, First Nations Health Authority, you would see what was taken. And you will see those were private records. They're always targeting private records, because even in the data set that they steal, they might steal all sorts of data sets, but they're going to pull out what's valuable so they can extort and compromise the organization at hand. And they do want to brag about that. They do want to make sure you know they got your data set that is high value to you, and that could possibly put you out of business if they resell it. Now, when it comes to privacy laws, now PII, that is a law in Canada. And so it basically says if 1,000 or so, like if it affects a person and causes harm, then you could be liable. So it's important for you to understand that your organization has high value assets, and you are a high value target. That's what I think people have minimized. I talk to enough people where they go, well, I don't have anything a hacker would want. But every organization has PII. So I want to keep circling back to that, is that every organization has that. And now the government of Canada is going, if that causes harm to any individual because it was stolen, that company can be sued. So not only will you be breached, you'll be down for up to 3 weeks. You'll have to pay all your own money to get back operational. You could possibly have a civil lawsuit because you didn't protect that personal identifiable information, all of that data. And if a client deems that they were, their identity was compromised, they don't have to scream very loud. They just have to say, this caused harm because my identity was compromised and my identity was stolen, and this is what happened, or this is what I lost. They could sue you. Can you afford that as an organization? Probably not. But that is where we're at, that you're going to be targeted in many different ways for a cyber incident. even when you thought it wasn't your fault, even when you weren't aware that that could have possibly been a problem. So being aware of what you're accountable under the Government of Canada, the privacy laws, I would recommend you take one of your staff members and ask them to do some due diligence and research that for you so you can understand what are you accountable for? What is the cost if you're not going to adhere to that? Healthcare, they've got that down. They understand health records. Lock those down, protect them. They're private, confidential. No one has access to them. No one's allowed to access them without permission to access based on their role. But that is healthcare. We need to act like that in every organization, whether you're in construction or whether you're in agriculture, because it's all data sets that have high value assets to you, to the industry and to the government. Now, I'm going to present a few recommendations that you can protect your organization, and you got to start thinking about how you can add security to your business process, right? So build a security conscious culture within your organization. What are you doing now? What can you add so that before you are, let's say you are doing your invoicing, are there checks and balances to make sure nothing can be circumvented in between that process? I've had organizations where that's been circumvented. And so then they've paid their vendor when it wasn't a vendor, it was a hacker, because they didn't follow a process. So if you had just the simple processes you have, implement security so that you're making sure that where your assets are, which is always money, but also that personal information, that private data, whatever keeps you running in your business, have your processes in place where security is first, whatever that takes for you to do that. And the other thing is that when we talked earlier about file sharing, put in some best practices around document sharing. So protect your files using encryption, using the right securing the right sharing tools, but also if your department, your project team on X is working with project team Y, and project team Y only needs a data set of one from your other team, you have to have your team members ask, do they need this whole data set? Maybe they only need 2 columns out of that. So you scrape out the other columns so you're not sharing everything with a whole team that doesn't have privileged access to it and doesn't have the need to see that data. Because it's compromising your organization when you're sharing all of this valuable data sets with a team that doesn't need that information. So there's different aspects around file sharing, but also just how people are sharing confidential information and how they're storing it, right? I have a picture here of a password list because that's what some administrators do. They just put it on a spreadsheet and put it on their desktop or put it in their OneDrive. Those are really, really risky practices to adhere to. So we have to remove those from our day-to-day and not make it easy for our staff to do such things because it puts your organization at risk. And out of all the things that I'm going to tell you today, I would say this is one of the most important things. Because if you have a cyber incident and your systems go down, if you have your data and you own your data and you know where your data is, just like we protect our home. We know how to lock up our home. We protect our car. We know how to insure it, lock it, put it in our garage. Ourselves, we know how to physically protect ourselves. We have to look at our data that we work with in our office the exact same way. That different accountability where your business unit needs to treat it where we're like, where's our data? And how are we backing it up? And how are we protecting it so that everyone in your organization is diligent? So you can ask your team and your leadership. So if you're sitting at the board in your boardroom, you can ask them, what are we encrypting? Are we encrypting our sensitive data at rest? Are we encrypting it while it's in transit? You have to do that, but are you doing it? Are we regularly backing up and testing restoration processes? Have you implemented an endpoint protection on all of your devices? You have to look at your data as an asset that has to be protected so that if you go down, you could easily go, we have it backed up safely, and then we can retrieve it regardless of what that cyber incident was, And also this includes when you have an outage, right? It's all the same. But the thing is that if you're not prepared, that's where you're going to be down 10 days, 11 days, 12 days. And then you're going to have customers lose confidence in you. You're going to have shareholders lose confidence in you. And this is one of the easier things to do when you think about all of this best practices in terms of business continuity. So look at that as a team, look at that with your leadership, and ask yourselves what you're doing with that, because you want to know, where is your business critical data backed up? I don't want to dismiss the cost to this as well. I know that there is a cost, and that won't go away though. Unfortunately, that is what we're up against. Hackers know the easiest way to find our assets. I wish they didn't. I wish they weren't as stealthy as they are, but they are. So we have to put up our barriers, and it's by protecting our data, so that if they stole your data today and said, too bad, you can't do anything, you have to pay us money. Unless you don't pay us money, we're going to sell your data. You can be like Indigo and say, we're not going to give you money. We can't pay you the money. Go ahead, do what you will. We can stand up because we have our data, and we're going to stand up for data, and we're going to keep continuing running business because we have a backup. You will face reputational harm. I'm not saying you won't, just like London Drugs. But do you still use London Drugs? I do. I mean, because, you know, it's not an individual's fault. It's not a company's fault. We're all in this together trying to stop that. Well, we can't stop it. So we have to be understanding that no software is secure, no human is secure, and no, you know, practice, like all of the measures you put in place will not avoid and stop all of this, right? So you have to just do your due diligence, but this is one way to kind of keep your business running and keep business continuity in place so that you can keep your clients happy, your services get rendered when you need to, and be operational. And then when it comes to your mobile device, have a plan, have a policy in place. Implement that if you don't. For MFA, have that in place, have that as a mandatory thing. It's as critical as ever, so that you can always make sure, if regardless of where your staff are and their skills and their access points, they're accessing the software securely. And MFA is just one layer that they can follow. And it's, again, takes a few seconds of their day. And it just is another measure for incredibly positive, effective cyber hygiene in your organization. And again, a lot of software is implementing this already. It's just a matter of enforcing it. So I say, don't ever enter this software without it. It's just one best practice. Passwords, they still matter. If I can't wait till we don't ever have a password, but that hasn't changed yet. Still going to be there for a while, for the foreseeable future. So we have to navigate and manage our passwords. So again, looking up at NIST, following their password management policy, getting your team on a password manager, helping them, educating them to do this so they can do this securely. That will be another measure you can take. Because again, those two measures protect the data, because individuals are accessing the software securely and they're verifying through MFA that is them. So then that's them getting into the software that you're providing them to do their job. Now, third-party services, those are a concern. 30% of all data breaches now involve third-party vendors. So making supply chain attacks one of the most common breach methods. So you need to now vet your vendor partners differently, right? So you can ask yourself this question. Are there any risks that come from the companies you rely on to run your business? So for example, a bookkeeping app, a payment processor, maybe a web designer, IT support, maybe cloud tools, maybe marketing platforms like a CRM. Any of those get compromised, that impacts you. And what would that impact you with? Would that be weeks of downtime? Would it be a loss of revenue? Would it be like a loss of client trust? And then you have to ask yourself, who outside of your company can access or see or touch your data or your systems today? So again, referring to the NIST cybersecurity framework, their verbs are identify who they are, protect, detect, and respond and recover as a backbone to show how each applies specifically to your vendor. So you can go, okay, how do these vendors protect our data? And make sure that you're aware of what your vendors are doing, what they're accessing, right? List the vendors so you identify who are all our vendors. How are we protecting? Well, do we have MFA in place in all of them? And if you had a breach, or a vendor had a breach, who do you call at that vendor? Do you know? Like, it's kind of like you have to have that list ready, because again, they're as vulnerable as you are. I have a financial services client and they deal with obviously investments, and one of their partners had a big cybersecurity breach. And so that affected them because, again, it's the tunneling. They were connected because of the services they offered together. Even though that company, that financial services company, didn't get breached, they had client files in there. So now they have to go talk to their clients because that company got breached. So it becomes a big mess really quickly because they're partnering with third-party vendors. So being aware of what you're doing with your third-party vendors, what you're giving them for data, how you're trusting them and working with them, you have to be fully aware of that partnership, and it can't just be full trust. And then when it comes to your staff, the security culture and the change management, you have to put something in place to help your staff, right? So one of the acronyms, ADKAR, right? That's the 5 outcomes of an individual needs to achieve for change to be successful, right? Helping them with awareness, helping them, give them that desire of like the knowledge, the ability, the reinforcement of like, why should I do this? Help me understand why, but giving them tools to do it so they can do it effectively. Because most of your staff want to do this, they just probably don't know how. And most of the industry is saying, high percentage of the issues in cybersecurity are due to human error, but it's only because they don't know. So your staff are trying to do their best. They're invested. It's not because they're being negligent, and never think that. It's that they just don't know. And if you approach it from that, you will go, okay, what do they need to know more of? And how can we equip them? And then also just to give a really easy statement to be able to push again to your team members as like a motto, and that is always verify. So if your accounting team is getting a new vendor request for a payment change of where they receive payment, there's got to be other ways that your team members can verify securely outside of the incoming source that it came in. Because that incoming source could say, hi, we're vendor X and we want to change our payment terms with our payment process with you. Please switch this banking information. Or if you have any problems, call this number. So do you notice all of that information is coming from that one incoming communication. So if your staff don't realize it and they call that number, they're going to just get back to that hacker. And if they don't realize it and they email that person, they're just getting back to the hacker. So instead, pivoting, verifying through a trusted source, going, hey, vendor, did you just actually send in a request to change your payment method? And they could say, no, we didn't. Then you've done your part, because instead of blindly trusting every incoming request, your staff are verifying these digital incoming requests, because we think incoming requests digitally are real. That's the best part, is they're not real, and we're never going to be able to know they're not real because everything around it looks real. So that's where we have to go. If we can just tell our staff to verify through a trusted means, not through the incoming means of that communication, you could avoid a lot of headaches, especially when maybe they don't know how to detect and they aren't sure. And it may seem odd. They might have a sense of like, that's a really weird request, but that's not like they're going to say anything to you to say, I don't know what to do about this. This seems weird. But instead, just tell them it's okay, verify, just go. Any incoming request that deals with anything that's valuable to our organization, we're going to set up a policy where you have to verify it through the official means. Nothing complicated to that. That means no matter which way these hackers change their methods of conning your staff through any means of that, phishing campaigns, digital texts, phone calls, emails, you name it, If they have that approach, then they won't be necessarily alarmed by the approach, because they'll have a system in place to be able to navigate whatever tactic is coming and whatever sophisticated tactic comes their way. So if you could just plan for, not if, but plan for when it does happen, then you can be prepared, and you won't have to necessarily think you have to do this alone. You can do this with your team members and bring it in as an organization as a whole to kind of take this step, deciding what you should do as a priority as an organization, and then one step at a time, right? So you can do it in very practical steps, right? Review and improve your data management processes for starters, right? Maybe you conduct a yearly gap assessment, find out really where you're vulnerable. That's again where you would outsource it. Enforce security policies. So if you don't know what policies you need to have in place, we're going to share some resources for you so you can review those and you can double check. Okay, maybe we need this policy first, enforce it. Then we'll add this policy, enforce it. And the thing is that this can take time, and that's okay. Just starting today with managing and navigating these little changes can make huge difference over time. And at this juncture, you're going to continually have to do that. So it isn't one and done. Oh, we'll be done this in 3 months. This will be a continual improvement. Continual. So if you look at it from a business aspect and as a budget line aspect going, we're going to continually invest in securing our organization, and we're going to take it step by step, and we're going to prioritize these things, and we'll do this over the next year. That's how you can speak to your board members, by prioritizing it. And it doesn't matter about, like, it could be about the cost, but more about it could be about your business priorities. Where do you feel you're most at risk? And that's where you target first. And then you find out, well, what will that cost? Then you tell your board members, this is the cost, but this is the return if we don't do it. This is the return if we do it. This is the cost of doing business, because part of this is the cost of doing business. So on the technology side, you can't do it alone. So you have to know that as well. So that's where you would bring in a managed service provider to help you with the securing your endpoints, right? Helping you with phishing resistant MFA, technology, helping you with maybe partnerships if you need cyber insurance or other aspects around your business that you need, that you don't have the resources, the expertise, and you need it now. So those are the things where you just have to accept that, again, it's a business line item. There's a cost to it. And so another simple thing is to be ready for this risk, you have to put some things in place first. So preparing for that risk to know, okay, we will, if this happens, what will we do? And we call that an incident response plan. And I'm not saying this is easy to do, but for a takeaway for today, you could do that and you could fill that out. And having a communication plan, which is included in this incident response plan, that will help you navigate the mayhem that occurs when you have a cyber incident, because you know who to call, you have it printed out so that everyone who needs to be involved in that in leadership has that printout, and you don't have to rely on your systems that you're locked out of or they're shut down. So you have that paper ready communication plan in place so that you can go, we know what to do and we know how to handle it, because the first 24 hours are critical, 48 hours are mandatory to just navigate that, to keep clients happy and your staff happy. I remember when I was working with a client and they had a cyber incident and they were terrified that they had all of their client data compromised. And I got a call at 6 o'clock and the CEO was beside himself. He's like, am I going out of business? Am I going to lose my business? Am I going to have to shut my doors? And I mean, he was terrified. He didn't know what to think. He didn't know what to do. And so having to talk to him about, okay, now it's time to put this into place. And this is the communication plan. Follow it. Who's going to be on it? And he's like, these are the 3 people that are going to be leading it. I said, those are the only 3 people that you talk to right now. And they are going to navigate the messaging, and you do not say anything right now until we know what the problem is, because there is no concern yet. We have to determine how to determine that this is actually an issue. So you can't put the cart before the horse, but you have to have a communication plan. And that communication plan was in place. The people, the leadership was in place so they could handle it, and they navigated it pretty seamlessly because they had that in place, and it wasn't mayhem, and it wasn't miscommunication either. Miscommunication to the client. There was no miscommunication to the team members. Everyone had the same messaging. So it seemed under control. And then when they did find out the concern, they were able to navigate that with their communication plan effectively. And again, no reputational harm, because it didn't end up being a massive data breach. And they were grateful because when they brought in a forensic investigator, they were able to navigate and find out, oh, the issues were this vulnerability and this vulnerability, but not a massive data breach. So they kind of got a warning in a nice, gentle way, but terrified him in every way that made him put everything in place even more so to help him realize the implications and how quickly things could go sour for him, because if he wasn't ready. So this is one way to just be ready and just to be able to take action immediately. Now, my question to you is, from today's session, Matt, if you will put up a poll, this somewhat covers everything that I can cover with you today, given the time that we have. What actions would you be able to take after today's session? Knowing your resources, knowing the team members you have, knowing, some of you mentioned board members, some of you mentioned awareness because of team members not knowing. What would be your action that you could take from today? Love to hear from you. And we're going to share some resources for you. And then in those resources, there's some free training. So you can peruse through that. And maybe I would recommend, as people are filling out the responses here, I will just say what you can do is, I would recommend you bring on, we call it a security champion. Bring on somebody that could put their hand up to say, I could help you do research. Bring them in, give them these resources, tell them to help you find, and then what you need to find. So you say, oh, I need an AI policy. We need to implement an AI policy because we don't have one yet. We aren't sure where we stand. So then you go, okay, we don't know where we stand. We need to talk about it as a leadership first. So for example, at one law firm that I'm working with, they have said we will vehemently block Claude AI. We cannot use it because it does not protect client data on any level. So they're using obviously Copilot because they're an enterprise Microsoft client. But the thing is that they decided we're going to use Copilot enterprise version, and then they're going to secure it in their tenant. But they knew that they couldn't use Claude. And they used ChatGPT, but that was, again, a business decision. So you have to make that business decision deliberately. Everyone's using AI, and they're going to be using AI. So you need to say which AI they can use, and then that you can protect the data, because you're saying we can protect our data, client data, if we use this AI and not that AI. And then you push that out as a policy, and you push that out as messaging. Trust me, people want to follow that. They will follow it without a question. They just need the direction. So if you give them that direction and give them the clear reasons why we're going to use Copilot because it protects our client data, they'll do it. Please do not use Claude. Please do not use Perplexity. These are not safe for our business purposes. You can use them at home on your own devices, but please do not use them on our work issue devices or for work purposes. Simple as that. So when you think about your takeaways, some of these can be really, really easy. But if you bring in a security champion to help you kind of lead the research, again, they don't have to be an expert, but they can go take this, get you some of the key points of information you need. One, bring your leadership. Two, bring to your board members so you can have talking points to say, this is why we need to do this, and this is what we're going to do. And based on our priorities, we're going to tackle this first over the next 3 months. We're going to tackle this next over the next few months. We're going to tackle this next. And this is how we're going to do it. And again, if you keep it in bite-sized pieces, you can really make some effective changes that could secure organization really, really, really well without a large budget. Okay, so Matt, is there enough responses in?
Yeah, we got 4 responses.
Ooh, nobody wants to say anything?
little more shy for the second poll. Yeah.
Everybody, are you shy? Don't be shy. Okay, Matt, how about you turn off the recording at this
Yes.
juncture so that people could feel a little bit more
Certainly.
willing to
Yes.
say
Give me
something.
a moment
Yeah.
to do that. All right. Should